So good evening, everybody, and this is the LGFA Rules Discussion with National Referees webinar. So I'd like to welcome you all this evening and hope you enjoy it. We have a really fun-filled theme of rules to discuss and get throughout the night. So any questions, don't be afraid to ask. The aims of tonight are to understand rules more in depth, discuss in-depth current rules with national referees, and provide guidance regarding rule questions or queries. That's what we're hoping to cover. I'm delighted to have two national referees on with me tonight, giving up their time, Siobhan Coyle and Seamus McPhill. Siobhan has refereed an array of ladies football matches, and probably our most senior or standout at the minute was the junior All-Ireland final in 2020, which is also did a range of All-Ireland senior championship games for the Ladies Football Association and Ulster provincial games and Ulster provincial finals throughout her career. So she's very well experienced, and we're delighted to have her on board with us this evening. Seamus also has a very long-lasting career with us. He's one of the very few national referees that has actually refereed the All-Ireland at junior, intermediate and senior level, as well as Club All-Ireland senior, junior and I think intermediate finals, as well as many Munster finals and games within Kerry. So between the two of them, although slightly different styles of refereeing, both extremely knowledgeable, and hopefully you'll enjoy tonight's and this evening's conversation with them. So folks, do you just want to say hello there?
Hello everybody.
Hi everyone, and thanks for asking me on, Claire.
No problem, and hopefully you don't hear very much from me tonight. I'm going to leave it in the very capable hands of Siobhan and Seamus this evening. Before they do that, I just want to set the scene for us all and know who we have on board. So what we're going to ask is, in the poll, is how would you describe yourself as a new to refereeing, a coach, player or experienced referee? Just so we know who we're talking to this evening, if you want to just click on the poll, it should be up on your page now. That'll be great. Okay, brilliant. Everybody clicked on the poll and just sharing the results there. So Siobhan and Seamus are aware. We've 55% on tonight, guys, that are new to refereeing. So that's just brilliant to see. With some coaches on, and then with 40% experienced referees. So a real mix between the new and the experience. So hopefully will really help you out in terms of the questioning. The next question I have for you to think about and ask yourselves again is, when a rule query comes up, what do you do? So you're refereeing now. If you have a query on a rule, what do you do? Are you more likely to look up the LGFA official guide, look up the playing rule book, ask another referee, forget about it, or contact the county board or referee coordinator? What's your go-to? Just for another matter of interest. Yeah, a bit surprising there. I'll show you the results there. Great to see. The official guide and the playing rule book are so accessible. They're both online at the minute. So it's good to see that 55 jumped straight to the official guide. And that's something I always have close in my own hand. And 40% have went to the playing rule. I probably am a bit taken back that nobody went with ask another referee. And thankfully nobody went with forget about it, and we had the 5% that went with contact the referee county board. So that's just something for Siobhan and Seamus maybe to keep in mind when they're explaining things too. A lot of them do go towards the official guide in the playing room. So without any further ado, we're going to just jump straight into it. As a referee, what do you think are the most important rules surrounding the kickout? And Seamus, I'll go to you first regarding that. What do you look at towards the kickout?
Yeah, I suppose good evening everyone, and as I say, thanks for having us on, Claire. Yeah, I suppose for the kickouts, the first thing I would look for that everyone is outside, that they're outside the 20, that it's kicked from the right position. I would certainly have my umpires tuned in that after the score is kicked from the 20, and if it's wide ball, it's kicked from the 14. We'll notice obviously at all levels of the game that there can be a little bit of grace, but I mean, they shouldn't be crossing the line. So a little word with the umpire, before the match, and just say, look, keeper, don't break the line. It's probably prevention rather than cure. That'd be the first thing I'd look for. And obviously that it crosses the line and travels the required distance. They'd be the two things for me. Positioning on it. I suppose for a kick out, I found that certainly don't be in the middle of the field, be to either wing, okay? So you have a better view. And I would position myself between the 21-yard line and the 45, somewhere in between the two of them. I wouldn't be any farther outside the 45 when it's kicked from the hands. They'd be the two things for me. Sure.
And if you had a top tip for a referee, Seamus, surrounding the kick out to try and, improve it for them? Yeah,
my top tip, and it's something that's, I suppose, I've used all down through the years, is just let the keeper know, don't kick it until I blow the whistle. So they're waiting and have the whistle until the whistle is blown. And when you blow it, they kick it. So you're setting that stall out early. You're taking control. They know that, until he blows the whistle, I'm not going to kick it. And that's a tip that I have that's just worked quite well for me. Because with the way the game has been played now, they just want to get the ball out as quickly as possible. So just slow it down. You're in control. And if you set it with the first 2 or 3 kickouts, it'll make your job a lot easier right through the game.
And Siobhan, what about yourself?
I think, most of the rules are Seamus has kind of got there. The biggest thing for me at the minute is like the positioning and how far the players have to be away. For me, there's been a number of games, particularly the county games, where I've had goalkeepers and managers or coaches coming up to me at the start of the game and asking me the kick out rule, or are they trying to see my interpretation of the kick out rule? And it's particularly because then they're going short.
Yeah.
So I know we don't have the D, and they're always asking about that, but that gives you your 13 meters. The player has to be 13 meters away from when the ball is kicked. But now the other thing I always like to tell them though is if the goalkeeper is taking it from the 13 meter, well, technically the players don't have to be outside the D. So don't be shouting at the chosen 13 meters away, because she's already gone 7 meters or 8 meters to the 21 meter line. So yeah. You don't have to be. So that's one just to be careful with. A lot of teams now are going with the short kick outs. So it's just to be aware that where they are before the ball is kicked. And the other one that catches a lot of players, particularly underage, I've noticed, is players not outside the 20 meter line, and then they're going in to collect the ball. And for me, it's a free in. And ladies, I know the men, they're hop the ball. So that's a big one. If a player picks it up inside the 20 meter line, it's a free to the opposite team. So it's to make sure that people don't mix up the rules with the GA and don't hop the ball.
Siobhan, that's 2 brilliant points, I suppose. First one saying, people are asking the kick-out rules now when they see on the pitch, so be aware of that. I suppose that's a real good awareness point. And the second one, probably in and around that, is if we have different rules from the GAA, so make sure you know when you're going out on the pitch what one you're refereeing, so you're not getting confused. Do maybe a quick debrief of them and what they are. Okay, thank you. And folks, there is the official rule in and surrounding the kick out. I just thought we would show it up so give you a bit of clarification on what the folks were talking about, especially if you're new to it. So the rules in and surrounding it. And one you probably didn't touch on, guys, that I might ask you again. What about the 416M, deliberately delaying the kick out or a free kick?
Yeah, it's I suppose it's something that's you have to just keep an eye on it, I suppose. For me, I give the goalkeeper a warning. She'd be lucky enough to get a second one, and then I take action. You know what I mean? That's where I'd be with it. Because it has come into the game a little bit. But I think you can handle it. It's prevention rather than cure. I think you can handle it without actually having to take the action. So that'd be my feeling on it anyway.
So you're sort of staying on top of the kickouts from the start.
Yeah. As I said already, I think if you can cut all that nonsense out in the first 5 minutes or the first 3 or 4 kickouts, I don't think you'll have a problem later on in the game. Because it shows you're in control. It shows you're aware of what's going on and you're in touch. So that's what I'd be doing. And
Siobhan, another wee rule that I know sometimes comes up. What if the goalkeeper doesn't kick it far enough to hit the 20-meter line, so the ball lands on the 16 meters. What happens then?
Well, normally what happens is you have players running in. That's what normally happens, and then that's where you're free. And the reason that happens is because goalkeepers don't know the rule that they can go and kick it. Now they have to kick it; they can't take it into their possession. So they can go, if they're 16 meters, as you say, they're clear, and kick it outside the 20-meter, and then it's up.
Yeah, it's always just another interesting one to sort of have up the sleeve and to know what's happening. Thanks, folks. That's our kick out. You can see all the rules there; they're all numbered for you. Now, another great topic that everybody likes talking about is yellow cards. So this is a question that came into us. You've just started a match and a player commits a yellow card offence. Do you give the yellow card? It's really early in the game, literally within the first minute. You see the offence. Do you give it or do you not give it? Siobhan, I'm going to let you kick off with this one to start with.
Oh, for me, Claire, it's very, very simple. If there's 11 fouls for a yellow card, and if she commits one of them fouls, it doesn't matter if it's in the first minute or the last minute of the game, it has to be a yellow card. And that's the way I look at it. Like if a player, to me, say, if I think it's a deliberate pull down or high tackle, well, then it's an automatic yellow card and it doesn't matter what time. It's the same thing in the last minute. You could say, oh, what's the point? Because she's not going to go sinband. You still give the yellow card. It doesn't at any time in the game.
And I suppose it doesn't reflect on you what offence it is. It doesn't matter if it's a deliberate trip or a high tackle or whatever. If it's a yellow card, no matter. And I love the way you said, even in the last minute of the game, because you had a very challenging championship game earlier on this year where you nearly had no cards, and then in extra time, I think you had 4 yellows.
One before the last minute and then 3 in extra time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so it just shows you it doesn't matter when the offence is committed, whether it's the first minute or the last minute. I think we have to follow by the rule. What do you think in and around that, Seamus?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's again similar to Siobhan. It's the rule book is not determined by the time of the game. As I say, you have to. I think that's me there on the picture. As far as I remember, that was in Clonus. That was very early in the game. That particular yellow card. It doesn't matter what, like, people will say, okay, the game's only after starting, and he or she's a referee after giving a yellow card there. Did not give the game a chance to settle down. We don't make the rules. Do you know what I mean? If it's a yellow card offence at any stage, it just has to be given, because if you let that go in the first minute or the second minute or early in the game, and you have a similar decision in the 20th minute to make, the questions will be asked. It's a key game decision. The questions are going to be asked. Well, he didn't give it in the second minute. Why did he give it in the 18th? You're making up your own rule, and you're making your day very, very difficult ahead. You get through the first quarter. I divide the game into quarters, so it's 4 quarters. And you're going to be behind the 8 ball for the rest of the game, I feel, if you don't set down your marker early.
I just sort of picking up that, Seamus, I just loved your last comment there, and I think that's in and around decision making. If you don't give it in the second minute and you give it in the 20 minute, you're always running yourself into trouble. So I think what the both of these are trying to say is, if you try to stick along with the rule book as much as possible, it won't see you wrong, really. Once you know that offence has been committed, you have to make that decision and you stick with it, and it'll help you control the game as you follow through with it. Okay, this one is a very topical topic at the minute, and it's something that I do think it's important that we spend a bit of time on. And if anybody has any comments in and around noting, feel free to ask away at the questions. So what I'm going to ask first and foremost is, over to you, Seamus. What is a noting in ladies football?
Yeah, so basically a noting is, I can go through the list there if you like. Yeah, is that what you want, Claire? Yeah, just go through the list.
If you just explain what you believe a noting is.
Basically, a noting is, for example, pushing or holding an opponent. It's basically, 3 notings, 1, 2, 3, and on the third noting there should be a yellow card. So I take control of, it's basically a control mechanism, and I would let all the players, and I think it might be coming up there later, I would tell all players that they're noted, you're noted. And I think, again, this goes back to the prevention rather than cure. I've often had a game where I've had a girl had 2 notes at half time and she doesn't lay a glove in the second half. So again, it's prevention. She knows she's on, if she fouls again, one of the noting offences, she goes off the field, for in the sin bin. So to me, it's a great tool. I see it as a tool. That's what I would see it as.
Okay, that's so you can see Siobhan very clearly in that picture, hopefully. Issuing the 3 fingers up and holding the yellow card. So she's just sent someone off for a yellow card, persistent fouling. So that'll take me over to you, Siobhan. How do you find best communicating your noting?
Oh, I'm just very clear and simple. I think if you're clear with the player, first note, and I once I tell them, and I even before even I start the game, Claire, the first thing I do is I always tell the captains, I will tell your player if they're noted. So then simple, they know it. As I'm ticking a player, I'll tick them now. Sometimes the game might go on and it'll be the next time I see that player, but I'll always try to make sure that I've got to the player and say, right, you're noted. And it's just a clear thing, player, you're noted. And unless they question or say something, you don't have to explain anymore. If they say it, I'll say why. Then second tick. And normally if you have time, if the play hasn't gone on, I'll say the second tick, next time you'll be off, because sometimes I think that helps to get it into their mind and that they didn't know. And as Shema said there earlier, once you tell them that, you all notice a lot of times if the player's on 2 ticks, they are a lot more careful and they'll be afraid to, you can see them nearly pulling out of tackles later on, so they're aware of that. And then third one then, as you can see, is the yellow card, and to make sure that we signal it properly. Because sometimes if you don't, the biggest thing you hear is, that wasn't a yellow card, or why did she get a yellow card?
Yeah. So, people think you've given a yellow card for a push. Sometimes, Siobhan, doesn't that happen?
Yeah.
Somebody's just asked the question here, like, how do you decide what's a tick and what's not a tick? So what's a noting and what's not a noting? How do you decide that?
I suppose it's knowledge, and I mean, I don't go to any match without the rule book that you have there. So I'd always look over that. I don't say I do it every week, but I would certainly have it'd be there for reference, and I would certainly look at it every couple of weeks just to brush up. But these are the noting offences, and basically, as we said already, stick to that. You can, if you don't go outside that, no one can really question. You know what I mean? You're covered by rule, and that's something I keep in my head.
Seamus, I suppose there's a light tip. Somebody has, but it's a, it's a small push or a small hand on rather than anything, or a small grab. Yeah. Are you noting that?
No, well, I suppose that there's 2 things. Is it incidental, or is the player trying to balance herself? Do you know what I mean? So that's a judgment call that a referee has to make. For me, no, I wouldn't be taking it if she's trying to balance herself, or if she's falling and she happens to fall in on the girl. Like, that's not. I think common sense has to come into it. I know it's not in the rule book, but common sense has to come in that situation. Like, if she's falling, she doesn't mean to push her, or an incidental foul, if that makes sense.
I think the message we all try to get across is that, it is a noting if it's really clear and really obvious, that there is going to be sometimes there's slight tips or taps, but there's nothing really in it. And you have to let that go, to let the game flow, because if you were taking all of that, you'd be in big trouble. So you have to make sure that it's the blatant obvious ones that we are punishing moving forward. So if you were, and I'm going to ask this to both of you, we've 55-60% that are very new to refereeing in this webinar tonight. So if you have one thing to say to them about practicing noting or dealing with it, what would be your top tip? Seamus, I'll go with you first.
The top tip with dealing with noting, as I said already, I think is just have the rule book. It's online there, it's available. I'd have a hard copy as well. I'd source it from your county administrator or I'd have a hard copy. I'd have it inside in the gear bag. It's not going to be any weight, and I would just refresh. And, if in doubt, and look, there's going to be, not every day is going to be a cup final. I still remember when I started refereeing, I got the time wrong. The third day I went out, I got the score wrong. came home for the bag in the corner, said I'm not doing that anymore. But you know, I came back, and 22 years later, I'm still here. You know, so that's the tip I give, that you know that you have the knowledge. Knowledge is key here. You know, and basically courteous, and you know, and get look, it's the old saying, it's on our jerseys, look, give respect, get respect, you know. That's the bottom line. Speak to them the way you would like to be spoken to, you know, and that'll take you a long way, you know. And basically, for any young referees coming up, or starting referees, take your time in each decision. You know what we say there at in our seminars, and you know there, Claire, that you know, what is it? Walk slow, think fast. So yeah, that'd be a tip I'd give. Yeah.
Siobhan, what about yourself? How would you even go in and around, you know, starting out? Like, how do you even note the players? What system do you use? You know,
that's what I was going to even say, Claire. Everybody has a different system. Everyone uses different little notebooks. Use what's for you. Even taking the scores. People write numbers, people do lines, people do square. Like, use a system, find what works for you and go with it. Like, mine is very, very simple. It's beside their number, it's a tick, then I have another tick, and then it's their name for the card, then, because you're taking their name anyway. Like, find a system in your notes that works and stick to that. Then I use the same system all the time and stick with it. And you were on about there, like, how do you know what's a note and what's not? I think the biggest thing too is learn your technical fouls first of all, and then most other frees that are deliberate, like a clear push, you're chopping down on it, they're all noting offences. So once you learn that, like a little clash or an accidental, they're not. But anything then deliberate, you're thinking, well, is it a note, a yellow or red? Automatically, you know there's something in it.
Right, and there's quite a lot of them, so you can see them there. Just while you were talking, I just flicked on to the next slide, so I do have it up for everybody. So these are all notings. Sometimes people get confused. What's a note? What's not a note? Everyone in this list, so it's our non-technical files, are all notes. But I suppose there's a lot more common ones than uncommon ones. You know, you'll see the noting, especially for the pushing and the pulling and the frontal push and the chopping down in the arms and the grabbing of the opponent's jersey and the charging and all of that elements. But you actually have 18 of them to learn. So it's really important that you sort of, they're the bread and butter of your refereeing, and you do know them in and around noting, so you know exactly what you're noting for. I think more than anything.
And Claire, just see there too is really important, I think, because it's one people mix up a lot of times, because you hear it all the time, especially because of the men's, and it's the black card. It's not a yellow card offence, it's only a noting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And is there any of them that you would pull out, Seamus?
Of the noting, I think the diving on the ball for me is one that's, you know, that's coming into the game a lot. You know, it really is. It's diving on the ball, and other players about to pick it up. I've seen that a lot now, especially in club games in Kerry. I've seen a lot of it, and Munster.
Yeah, they're definitely there, and you can see, and it's just to really have a reminder that these are really important, because we've already alluded to this. 3 of them is a yellow card, and it has you in the sin bin. So it's important as a referee that we're implementing this, and it's probably one of the biggest things that possibly isn't being implemented as much in club games as it would as you go on. So it does stand through all levels. It's supposed to be the exact same in club levels as province and national. Charging. So this is another really hot topic, and something that I know some people find it hard to get their heads around. You know, what is charging? Why is the referee calling this for charging? So we just want to have a bit of a discussion on it. And what I'm going to ask is, can you give a charge against a player who doesn't have possession of the ball? So that's the question that has been asked, and hopefully we'll answer. And I'm going to throw that over to Siobhan firstly.
Thanks, Claire. Well, for me, like charging, it's such a difficult rule in one way, and you have such a split second to make that decision. But like for us, the biggest thing, like, how do you define it? The biggest thing is the intent of the player. It's the first one, like, did they intend to do it? For me too, it's timing. Like if a player's moving, did the player have time to move around the other player? If they did and they still went into the player, well then that is charging. The other one though, and I think it's creeping more into the game now, is, and it kind of links in with this, it doesn't have possession. Defenders are now charging, coming out and charging at forwards.
Yeah.
You know, you can see that they're actually moving forward. Like if a defender's standing and that once they move forward, to me that is a charge because they've gone towards the player. But like the biggest thing that we're charging, like it was now that we have 3 rules, whereas before we actually only had 1. Am I right?
Yeah, with 1 and then 2, and now we have 3.
Yeah, we have 3 now. It started off with 1, and so you have the 3 levels, whether it's just charging. I think the yellow card one's nearly, it's made clear now and easy because the player actually has to turn into the other player and use the shoulder into the body. So it's, with the new rule, I think it's actually easier to referee now because they physically have to use their shoulder. So it's a simple one. Once you see a player turning and going into a player, it's a yellow card. Once the shoulder has gone into the upper body. And then the third one, it's the deliberate. And as I said, like deliberate, you have to decide, did they intend to do it? And did the delivery go on? And sometimes it's always to do like the distance they've come or where they've traveled to put.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And folks, we are going to discuss charging throughout this, but I just wanted to highlight here, we actually have a specific charging YouTube video that goes through the 3 levels of the charge in detail. It's about 7.5 minutes long, so we're not going to listen to it today, but if you go on LGFA YouTube and just type in the charge, this video comes up here, which you can see on the right. I'm just going to play it for 5 seconds so you can see what it looks like.
The charge.
And that will give you all the details you need to know as a secondary to what we discussed today. So Siobhan's given a really good introduction to it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put Seamus on the on the cuff here. I have a video of one of his games, and I'm going to ask him to describe his feelings. So Siobhan really broke it down for us. We have 3 levels of charge. Now the non-technical, which you can see there, is the charging of an opponent. The yellow card, charging of an opponent with the shoulder to the upper body, and the red, deliberate charge, including frontal charge or jumping at an opponent or colleague. And I'm going to show you this clip. I'll play it twice, and hopefully Seamus can talk us through his thought process in and around it.
And you're ticked, 24, you're ticked. Ticking 24. Okay, let's move it on, yeah?
I'm going to play it again.
And you're ticked, 24, you're ticked. Ticking 24. Okay, let's move it on, yeah?
So Seamus.
Yeah, so I suppose the first thing on that one is obviously the Cork player was going straight for goals. So it looked like open season for her. And quite clearly, I think if you can see there, I'm happy with my positioning because I'm close enough to see exactly what she done. I suppose instead of, and it's something that I use on the you can't hear it there now, but I would say go around her, don't go through her. In that case, she sees an opportunity of getting in goals. She basically goes straight in. I see it as a non-technical, as a charging of an opponent. Free out. There's no arguments from anyone. Now, it doesn't matter whether there is arguments or not, but in that case, there wasn't. There was no dispute about it. Game, and you can see how quickly I just continue the game on. There's no waiting. You know, just get on with it. But it's quite clearly a charge of an opponent.
And
which was not.
When you look at your decision making on it, Seamus, what are your thoughts around the force, the movement, and the intent?
I think the force is the judgment call. I think is medium. I think, you know, she does make half an effort to go around her, but the other girl is standing still and she goes basically straight through her. So it's an easy call. I don't see intent to hurt her. I don't see intent to actually drive her into the ground. I think it's just she's trying to get through to goals, but the other girl stands her ground and doesn't move. So that's basically it.
And are they three things that you would try and think of when you are looking towards what you're going to give?
Yeah, as quickly as you can. Do you know what I mean? Because that's in a split second. All that, like that happens there in 2 seconds. You know, that can be reviewed in a room of referees or reviewed on a forum like this, and you could have 10 different decisions. In that case, I think what helped me was that I was the positioning, that I was actually right next to it, as you can see, and I think 9 out of 10 times, if you're in that position and you make a call, I think you'll get it right.
You were very clear that that's what it was, and
yeah,
you're on with it. We have a wee question that has come in here in and around. That's all. Maybe throw it at you, Siobhan, so you don't think you're getting off lightly. When a player is running through on goal, it's probably quite similar to that incident. When is it the right time to call for barging, which is charging? How many defenders do you allow to intervene before giving a free in or a penalty?
Interesting question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, if she's running through on goal, like that clip there, if she deliberately goes into a player, it's charging it. If she doesn't, I think with regards to defenders, though, it doesn't matter how many defenders there is. Like it could only take one defender or could take three. Now, you could have a situation where there's 3 defenders around a player or stand the ground and don't actually touch the player. So it all depends actually on the actual
what action takes place.
What takes place and what they do. Now, if there's 3 players around and the player puts her head down and tries to go through them, that's a charge then. So it'll all depend. It's really kind of an open-ended question that it's really hard to answer that one. And as I say, like there could be 5 or 6 defenders. If none of them actually foul her, if they all just stand their ground, there's nothing, you can't give a penalty. So it depends. Whereas if they push her or do something to her or come out towards her, then you'll have to make a decision. Like there could be 10 different things could happen in that one scenario.
And how important do you think your positioning is when you're calling your charging?
It's such a big one. Like you see it all the time, and we see it too in our assessments. Like in this clip in particular, Seamus says he isn't probably in the best position because he can see that the defender was planted, that she wasn't moving, and the player came straight on. Whereas if you were behind the attacking player here, it would have been, yes, you could see the attacking player going in, but you wouldn't be able to know what exactly the defender got. That's why it's always trying better if we could be across or at a different angle from the play and don't get caught behind. So that's why our diagonal runs are better than our straight up and down. Whereas in this position, this is exactly where you want to be so that you can see what both players are doing. And has the defender come towards her or what has happened?
Brilliant. Super answer. Okay, now I'm just going to jump up. So this is one that is creeping in a lot. The game, as we know, people have been talking about it for ages, it's getting so much faster. The condition of the girls, the speed of the game. So with that, sometimes the skills speed up or there's a bit more of leaning away from the skills to make it quicker because the hands are nearly going quicker than the feet. So this game is getting so much faster and quicker. Any tips on what to look out for to make sure players are hand passing the ball and not throwing it? I'll start with you, Seamus.
Yeah, I suppose for me, and it's one I've used for years. Like as you said there, the way the game has gone, it's just so quick. It's quick hands, it's quick feet. They're supreme athletes. You know, basically, it's the clear strike in action. That's what I look for. You know, one tip that I was given by a referee long time ago, and I'll pass it on tonight. I'll share my knowledge. Was for a game, try to have your eye on the ball as much as possible from the minute you throw in the ball to the finish. So even if it's down the corner, do not let the ball out of your sight, you know, while it's in play. And I think if you use that rule and that's not always possible. It can be shadowed, it can be away from you. But within reason, try to see some part of the ball. I think that'll help you in this situation, you know. And as I say, just clear strike in action for me is the way that you can actually see that, you know, that the holding hand and it's struck with the other hand and it's clear, you know.
So we've a good wee clip of one actually being caught.
By
So just,
Fermanagh. It's all going very much, well, the referee signals
Yeah.
the ball has been thrown, I think, and he's given the free out.
I think
you
that
can
was
see
well.
By Fermanagh.
Yeah.
It's all going very much, well, the referee signals the ball has been thrown, I think, and
just
he's
as the
given free
pickup
out.
happens, it's more of a toss rather than that, and it sort of brings me into the point, Siobhan. You know, what's the difference here with the men's and ladies, and can you highlight that a bit?
Well, both in the rules, both men and ladies, it's a visible strike in action, but in the men, it must be underarm. So they can only have in the palm of their arm and under their arm to hit pound the ball. Whereas in ladies, it's visible strike in action. There's no underarm. So they could be holding the ball up in front of them and pushing it away. And I actually had a game at the weekend where a girl had the ball and she actually failed with the ball. So it was like she pushed it away, but she just with one hand pushed it from the other hand. So struck the ball from the other hand. So that was fine because it doesn't matter where in the body, it can go from the side as long as you see that strike in action. The other big one, and the other one then is it can go over their head, it can go anyway. But the other big one I think as well is it can actually be done with one hand.
Yes, yeah.
They can throw the ball up and then strike it. And the only time you'd really see that, I've seen it a few times, where I'm actually playing advantage because their other hand's being held and they just catch it and push it. And that's allowed. They're not actually throwing the ball, they've thrown the ball up and they've struck it with their hand.
Yeah, it's just like that, nearly more than anything.
Yeah.
And
And you would play, if there's a clear advantage, I would tend to give it, even though their hand's been held, because if there's advantage, you give it if you can. And
it's probably opening up a gap possibly, and that's why it was being held. So that's why you would be given it under that circumstance. So there's a question in, is it okay for a player to hand pass behind them over the head? I have seen refs that ref men's game call foul for this action.
You're allowed in ladies, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen it done before. Yeah, I think it's actually only there very recently. Jerome Quinn has an example up on his page, and it was put out as a question. It's one of the Donegal girls throws it over or hand passes over her head. Now, it won't happen very often in our game, but it has happened.
Yep. So it's another slight difference. Maybe referees just need to, just brush up on the differences between them and the knowledge it concerns. But in ladies football, you definitely can, as long as there's that strike in action in and around it. And you can see that the rules against it, which we've seen there, is throwing the ball is not allowed, and in and around our hand passing, it's the ball without a visible strike in action. It's a free hand pass the ball up and catching it before it touches the ground or before being touched by another player. A player may not throw the ball, however, she may toss the ball with one hand and play it with the same hand. So that was the rule Siobhan was talking about there, that she can allow that happen a lot of the time with advantage. So she does, and so it was good to see. Extra time. So this is one as well with a lot of county finals coming up and going, and we actually had a lot extra time in a couple of championship games this year as well. So it's important that we know our bits and pieces in and around it. So at the end of full time, the game ends in a draw. What rules must a referee be mindful of? So Siobhan, if you maybe want to take the first couple, and then Seamus might want to come in with the other ones. So what rules does the referee have to be mindful of in extra time?
Yeah, and just before we even starting this, Claire, like the referee, as a referee, you really need to know these and be clear on them, because anytime I've gone into extra time, and it happened there this year in the senior championship game, teams and managers don't know them and they come asking you. So you need to be very clear on them and be assertive that you know what you're doing. So the first one there, with playing time, it's 10 minutes a half, and it's only one period of extra time. So it's 10 minutes a half or a side with a 5 minutes half time. What else? The other one, particular when it comes to that, the sin binning. People think because it's a shorter game or shorter time that it's only 5 minutes, because I had, as you said, Claire, 3 players sent off, and I had someone come on at half time and extra time and said, oh, her 5 minutes is up. If the game was a full length game and it was 10 minutes in bin, then the extra time is 10 minutes in bin. So it doesn't matter what time she goes off, it's 10 minutes in bin. And the biggest difference, say, from the men and the GA2 when it comes to this is our notes and our cards and that all carry over. So if a player has 2 ticks in the game, her next tick in the extra time is her yellow card. And in my game, the last game recently that I did, that's why I ended up with so many yellow cards in extra time, is because the players had already had 2 ticks and then they only got 1 tick in their extra time, but unfortunately that got them their yellow card for persistent fouling. So that's the difference, and that's how it leads on. So it's really important.
It's not a new game, it's a continuation of a game.
And the subs as well. So they're allowed 5 more subs for extra time as well. So a lot of people think it's down to 3 or that, but no, you're allowed 5 more subs for your extra time. So to remember that as well. What else?
Oh, that's
I
loads.
think that's about it.
We give Seamus something. Seamus, what about the kicks? What's the differences there in our kicks with ladies football and the men's game? Maybe if it goes the
Well,
extra.
you're going to be amazed. I had it the weekend in the men's game where we created history in Kerry, where we had the first penalty shootout in the championship game in men's. But I won't dwell on that. So basically, what happened that day is in the men's, it's 5 players are nominated, and only them 5 can take penalties. Whether they go to the second round of penalties or the third or sudden death, it's only those 5. Whereas in ours, it's all players have to take a kick until someone misses when it goes to sudden death.
Yeah, so basically you start off nominating 5 per team. If it ends up that maybe both teams score 2 at the end of that 5, you don't go back round them 5 again. A 6th player has to step up, and then correct. A 7th, then an 8th. That's correct, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Like Claire, I was at games. I don't know. It's not in the rule book, as say, but where we actually asked the teams to nominate 8. You know, so that at least you have a few.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you a little bit of leeway, and then you can nominate more. So at least then, you know, you could even ask them for 10 if you wanted. But sometimes I think if you ask them for a few extra as well to give you, that it can help.
It can keep you right. And I suppose I have another one here for you guys. What's the procedure? So I'm sin bin with 5 minutes left normal time. Game ends up in a draw and it goes the extra time. What happens to a team there?
Yeah, you have to serve your 5 minutes at the start of you have to serve your 5 minutes until your time is up in extra time.
And is there anything a team can do?
Yeah, a team can start with 15.
That's right.
Okay, and then they have the choice. Say, as you say, Claire's 5 minutes left, so they have a choice then after 5 minutes to bring the other player on. But they have to remember then if they bring the other player on, it's actually classed as 2
substitutions. Yeah.
Okay, so then they only have 3 subs left for the extra time. I think that's the big thing, is that it's classed as 2 subs.
Definitely, and that's an important one to note, but it's a good one that people don't maybe realise that they can be allowed. You have a question in here. Do you do a coin toss for extra time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sean.
It's a new game.
It's a continuation of the game, but you still do a coin toss.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And guys, just so you know, so you don't think that they were waffling, there's our actual rules in and around extra time and replays. Again, on our rule books, all things that a referee should know, especially if it comes into a draw, you have to be able to brief a team and tell them. So the big one is there the 366 in exceptional circumstances, the organisation committee, border council may instruct teams to play 1 period of extra time followed by a point shootout from the 30 metres. So that's important too. Marking where the 30 metres is and having your umpires in place and even that setup of the kicks, folks? How do you deal with setting up for the likes of kicks?
Yeah, what I would do is I would use whatever officials I have with me on the day. So if you have 4 umpires with you, or whatever you have, 2 umpires, whatever you have with you on the day, and your lines people, I would have one lines people with one of the lines people with one team, one with the other. Obviously, the umpires are standing at the goals, and I'd maybe have, I just use everyone that's available. Use every tool that's there and everyone that's there to help you.
There's a real big thing about marking it.
Yeah, I had the players far enough back. Do you know what I mean? So you're going to be looking at the line yourself. That's fine. I'd be in a good position the way you can see whether we're over the bar or not. Obviously with the 80 or umpires. And I would stand just far enough away that you can make the judgment call. I wouldn't be up on top of the players,
Yeah, that's perfect. So you can just see there, I suppose it is the big one. It's the 30 meters indicated by the referee. It's important to realise this and know in under 14 competitions and below, the point shootout shall be from the 20-meter line. So there is a difference. And if they're under 14, only players, and that was probably something we maybe didn't tip on, only players who are remaining on the field of play at the end of extra time are eligible to take the kick. So they had to be on the field of play at the end of extra time. So whatever 15 finished the game, they're the only ones eligible. Each team shall take 5 kicks at point scoring, and it has to be a point. If the scores are still tied after each team has taken their 5 kicks, sudden death procedure shall follow using different players until such time as there is a winner. The ball must go directly over the crossbar, off the crossbar and over, or off the upright and over the crossbar to be counted as a point. A ball that hops in front of the goal and goes over the bar shall not be counted as a point. Any player that crosses the 20 or 30-meter marking point while kicking for a point shall also have the score disallowed. So again, just checking and looking in around all the extra time and replay rules there. Is the kicks allowed from the hand? Yes, all the hand. Yeah, it's free kicks. Some questions. Okay. The advantage rule. The player in possession of the ball is fouled and you play advantage. What happens if that player is fouled again within the 5 seconds? Over to you there, Siobhan.
Okay. Well, first of all, if the ball's fouled, so you're given advantage, you clearly put up your hand. If the player's fouled again, you have 2 choices. If there's still a clear advantage, you're playing another advantage. And if there's not, you'll be given a free, and it's from the most advantageous place. So wherever so normally it'll be where she was fouled the second time, unless she went back. And then I would be going back and make sure as well, because it's taken me a while. I know at the start, as you were learning, to go back and tick the player. If sometimes when we play advantage, we forget to tick. So tick the player if it's a notable offence. And the other thing advantage, I know some referees count it out. Personally, it's just not my thing to be shouting out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's a personal thing. And some referees do count out the seconds. So I think it's up to you as what kind of referee you are.
And Siobhan, you would say advantage on though, or let them know that they're just say a player's in front of you and can't see your hand being signalled? How would you communicate that then, that they actually are getting an advantage?
I normally say advantage and keep going. That's what I normally say. It's just I don't normally when you're running and that, it's just I can't get into the way of counting. It's just not my thing. But I would say to the player, keep going, advantage or that.
So you're still communicating that they know, they still verbally, and I think you made the real good point. You can see there, that's actually Seamus in the picture there with the hand up. It's not an advantage unless the hand is up, in and around it. And I actually have this in a bit of a video. Sorry.
I'm quite proud of this one, Claire. I'm quite proud of this one.
It doesn't look like it's. It doesn't look like it's
on, Claire. Go on 2 slides.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'll let you see it in and around, and let him talk it around. That's the picture frame of it. I was wondering there. So the rule in and around advantage, I suppose, before we let Seamus talk through his advantage next. If a foul occurs, the referee may allow play to continue if he considers this to be to the advantage of the defending team for up to 5 seconds. So you have 5 seconds, okay? If the player doesn't have an advantage after 3 seconds, you can blow the whistle and take the ball back. You don't have to continue to play it if there is no advantage. I think that's a really big thing. Where no advantage occurs, the referee may award a free from where the original foul occurred. So if you have decided to play advantage and it doesn't happen, blow the whistle, please, and take it back to the original free. It'll stop a lot of frustration. Should another foul be committed on the offending team within the 5 seconds, then the free is awarded from the most advantaged position. Disciplinary action, if warranted, may be applied to the offender, who in any event should be advised by the referee at the next break in play that a foul has been committed. So just because you've let advantage go as a referee, it doesn't mean you don't punish the foul. So whether that's a tick or a yellow card or a red card, it can all be in and around and surrounded. Any other wee bits in the advantage there before I show the video, folks?
I think it's just important, the communication. You know, I would say advantage over, actually. You know, I've got into that habit of, you know, when the 5 seconds are up and the player is bearing down on goals, and I'd say advantage over, and she kicks it wide, and she turns around and say, you know, she can turn around and say, why didn't I get the free? The 5 seconds is gone, you know, and I would agree. I with Siobhan there, I don't count it out. I haven't got into a habit, because how do you determine 5 seconds? My 5 seconds could be different to Siobhan's, could be different to Gary Owen's, could be different to Brendan Rice's. You know, we could be looking at different 5 seconds. So I wouldn't count it out. Personally, I wouldn't count it out, but I would let them know that the advantage is over where possible, because there could be decisions going on. There could be, you know, and I think it's important to be shown authority to come back and to be seen visibly. You foul there, you're ticked. You foul there, it's a yellow card, whatever the offence may be. And I think that's control, and that's again laying down a marker early in the game if you have to. Yeah.
So we'll watch this clip.
Wall a Trowley, Shachwin, Vicky Wall, has she done a Shachar Voida, Lauren McCormick, Vicky Wall, Isha!
I'll just show you it again for internet connection reasons.
Wall a Trowley, Shachwin, Vicky Wall, has she done a Shachar Voida, Lauren McCormick, Vicky Wall, Isha!
So Seamus, why did you decide to play advantage there?
I just felt that the girl had momentum. She's fouled twice at the start of the movement, and I felt the girl was obviously bearing down that she was, well, I was hoping she'd get through the first one. Like, they're the dream situations for a referee, that you know, that you give the advantage and that a score. In that case, it's an All-Ireland final and she scores a goal into the Hill 16. So that's a dream one. You know, they don't always work out like that. It couldn't be kicked wide and we'll be coming back. But if you'll see my hand set up for the 5 seconds, and that's important that you don't drop it after 3, you know, and then give the free. When your hand drops, you don't give the free. I've seen in club games where referees have put up their hand, dropped it after 3 seconds, and then given a free after 5 seconds. That can't happen. You know, keep the hand up. And I just felt there was an opportunity there. Maybe that's that famous old phrase that we have, you know, that slow whistle for a second. I felt momentum was with her. She was breaking through the tackle. She was fouled twice. There's no doubt about it at the start of the movement. And she had the physical strength to move on and obviously stick it into the net.
Did you take consideration into where it happened on the field, Seamus?
In that situation, yes. But I mean, for me, if a cornerback is coming out and she's been pulled and dragged, unless there's a clear advantage that she's going to get the ball to the wing back or to the midfielder, you know, I'd be blown, because there's no real advantage on the 21-yard line, you know, coming out for the defender. So certainly in that case, yeah.
So that's a big difference. What we would say is that advantage you gave there was in the scoring third. So you were letting to see if play developed for her, and if it hadn't, you know, you would have took it back and gave her the free. It just so happened that it opened up and made you look really good.
Yeah, on the rare occasion. But no, like, I mean, I suppose in that situation, and I did go back, I don't think you'll see it in the video there, but I did go back and I spoke to both players think it's on the audio, but you don't have the audio there. But I spoke to both players and I let both players know they were ticked. So,
which is a great point. And we have a couple of questions in and around it, so I'll fire them at you while I have you here. What if the player that you've given advantage to commits a foul herself? What do you do then?
Well, if she fouls and the advantage is on, I reverse the free. To be honest, it doesn't give her liberty, that player liberty to basically charge, or that can't happen.
It depends what the foul is, folks. So
yes,
if the person, so if Seamus is giving me the advantage, and then I go, and it's within, and this is where it's really important, it has to be within the 5 seconds. Within the 5 seconds, if I overcarry, then Seamus should be blowing the whistle and giving me my original free. Because I within that 5 seconds, I should have had my free and I wouldn't have overcarried. So if it's a non-technical or a technical foul, within the 5 seconds, the player that you had give the advantage to, as the referee, you stop play there and then and give them back to their original free before they created that foul. However, if it happens to be a yellow or a red card, then what you do in that instance is you stop play immediately, issue the player with the yellow or the red card, and you hop the ball. So hopefully that answers it for you. And the other one is, what about the one where you blow the whistle to call back the advantage and in the next second the ball hits the net?
Yeah, we've happened to me quite a few times. You can just be unlucky, but at the end of the day, the whistle's blown. You can't allow the score. It's just goes back to what I said earlier. That slow whistle, and you can be just unlucky. It's happened in a lot of games where you don't expect that pass, or you don't expect that kick, or you don't expect the quickness of hands. You don't see any clear advantage, and next thing, something just opens up and the ball ends up in the net, and you're after giving the free. It's just unlucky. There's nothing you can do. It's one of those incidental things that none of us can control. But as I say, I think what can prevent that is maybe just take that second or two, and I think being up with play in that situation and working on a level of fitness will help you, because you will be able to see, whether there's an opportunity for that goal to come. If you're 30 or 40 yards away, that's not going to be possible. Whereas if you're next to the player, or as Siobhan said, they're diagonal running, looking at an angle, not behind the player, I think that helps,
And there's another question. Can you only apply advantage once or keep going? You can only apply advantage once. An advantage is for 5 seconds. After the advantage is over, if they're fouled again, you give the free. You can't play another advantage and another advantage. So that's just a note. So thank you. A load of discussion always on the advantage. The pickup. So we'll show this wee clip here, and then we'll go through it. So the question is, can a player who is standing roll the ball back towards her, then pick it up off the ground? And I'm going to just also show this all around the pickup. So we have two different scenarios here. The one where the question is, and the one here now, why Siobhan has given this free.
It's actually a great. Can I come in there, Claire? It's actually a great spot, because there's a lot of players between Siobhan and and it's her positioning there as well. And I understand it, but I mean, there's a lot of players between her and the ball. So it was a great spot. But there it comes back to seeing as much as the ball as you can for as much as the match as you can. That's a rule I've lived by. That have that ball in sight as much as possible.
So what's your take on this, Siobhan?
Well, the rule is you must be in a standing position to take the ball into your control. So to pick the ball up. And in this video, you can clearly see the player has one knee on the ground and she takes the ball into her possession. So it's a free against her for doing that. With regards to the one on the question that was posed to you, if a player is in a standing position, she can roll it and then take it into her possession because she's in a standing position, so the only time that this really happens is if there's a few, and I've seen it before, and then the kind of player rolls the ball, say, around from another player and then picks it up. It's more so to try and get away from the tackle and then they're picking the ball up. But once they're in a standing position, as the rule says, but if their knee, and the big thing is if even one knee's down, they cannot take it into their possession. They cannot pick it up.
Yep.
And when on the ground, what can a player do?
They can palm it away or from them, as long as it's going from them, they can do it. So like any player can palm the ball away.
Right. And what's the difference between the men's game and the ladies' game regarding the pickup?
Good question. Well, the men, they can't, when it's on the ground, they can't touch it and it's on the ground at all.
Yeah.
And they have to use their toe, obviously, as well.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And which is a lot, you know, for inexperienced people, sometimes you can still hear that you're getting shouted at games. Oh, she picked it off the ground, you know.
Yeah, it's one that's coming into the game that I've seen is that girls are on their knees and they basically pull the ball towards them in control and didn't flick it away, if that makes sense. So they're actually controlling the ball, you know, that their hand on it or they move it into them and then they so they're not actually picking it off the ground. But I'm penalising that every time, you know, because once they bring it into their control, that's the way I see it. Control is the word. You know, that they're actually in control of the ball. As I know they haven't technically picked it up, but it's in their control. So for me, I'm penalising that as well.
Good stuff. So the rules there in and around it are a player may pick the ball off the ground with a toe or lift it with one or both hands, providing she is in a standing position. A player while on the ground may play the ball away from her, but cannot bring the ball that is on the ground into her possession. A player shall not kick the ball as an opponent is about to pick it up or take it into her possession. So that's the whole hand below the knees, folks. Does somebody want to elaborate maybe slightly on that?
Yeah, if a player is in, and it happens quite a bit, players in the act of picking up the ball, so her hands are, look, I'm kind of at her knees or below. You know, she's in the act of picking it up and the ball comes in, just give the free, that's it. You know?
Yeah. Once the hands are down below the knees and somebody comes in.
Well, she's in the act of picking the ball up, you know, and that's, you know, otherwise, if you leave that going, the first one or two, you're asking for trouble. And that's one thing I suppose we can learn from tonight. You know, lay down your marker early, you know. Don't allow that to happen, because if you allow that to happen in the first minute, you let it go earlier on, you're punished us now, you know, you lose respect of the players. The players say, okay, well, he's allowing everything go, or he or she's allowing everything go here, and that's trouble. You know, that's danger here, you know.
Brilliant, thank you, folks. So I've had you on for 65 minutes there, and I said we'll just be over the hour. So it's been brilliant, and there's a whole load of learning there from both Seamus and Siobhan, and I'll let them do, maybe we wrap up in a second, but just some really key take-home messages. And then we might answer one or two questions if anybody has any. Know your cards. I think it's really important, and it's shown through tonight from listening to the guys. No matter what time is on the clock, if a player commits a card in offence, you must give it. So know your cards, know your rules, and then you'll be confident giving it. Only play the advantage if it's a clear advantage to the team or the person. Safer with the team in possession, keep in possession. So only play the advantage if it's clear. You don't want the team that has possession to lose it because of that. If it's a free, bring it back and give the free. Only play the advantage if it is a clear advantage. There's 3 levels of charge in the game, so remember that, and always think about the force, the movement, and the intent involved. Reflect in your own game, learn from any mistakes, and ask for help when you need it. And I think for me, that's the real big one to leave on tonight. Ask for help if you need it. Find a support structure in and around refereeing in your county or in your province or whatever way you're refereeing. Especially, there was loads of people saying they were starting out in a referee career. My advice to you would be get a buddy, find a buddy, and buddy up. You'll never regret buddying up and asking somebody for their advice. And most referees sometimes have a hard day, but one hard day, usually there's 99 good days that we maybe don't talk about as much. So reach out and get that support. The referees are more than willing all the time to support anybody that comes. So I have a question in here, which I think is a really good one, and I'll ask it to both of you. At the start of a game, when speaking to captains, are there any specific rules as a referee you should be reminding the captains of to communicate to their teams? Some top tips on that. So Siobhan, what would you start with?
For me, like I always say to the girls, and that at the start, like we're playing football, you're playing on the ball. The biggest thing is I always mention about the chopping down and the pushing, because they're the rules I find that is most common in our game, and it causes that you're ticking for most often. And I always mention this them as well about dissent. I said, if I play advantage or if I give a free, I don't want to hear any dissent or a goal move the ball forward. I always give them that warning. And just that's the biggest thing for me is them two rules in particular. And then I let them, if they have any questions then.
And Seamus, what would you be saying?
Yeah, just at the start of every game, you know, I would just say, girls, look, you know, it's important that the game goes well for me as well, you know, and that just basically give respect, get respect. You know, you speak to me correctly, I will speak to you correctly. You know, we the better team will win in an hour when we get out of here. That's the one thing I would go across. I think I do mention the charging quite a bit because I think it's come into the game. You know, I would say, without going into detail of every rule now, but it's one I have said to a couple of players, you know, that I will be punishing charging. You know, this my famous one: go around her, don't go through her. You know.
Yeah. We've another question in here. What if you make a decision, and I think everybody's probably been in this boat, and you realise a second later that it was the wrong decision? Have you ever reversed an initial decision, or what have you done? And I'll go maybe Seamus first this time.
Super question. Yeah, it's happened to me loads of times where you just know you're wrong. It depends on the situation. I have reversed decisions, and I've just put my hand up and say, okay. You know, the most common one, I suppose, for me would be you'd signal the wrong way for a free. You'd mean to give it to the blue team, and next thing, for some reason, your hand goes up and you're giving it the other way, and you know you're wrong. Or it was a line ball that if you didn't have a lines person with you on the day, and you give a line ball the wrong way, and you know you're wrong. Yeah, I think, you know, out of fairness, I think if you can reverse it where possible, you know what I mean? It depends on the situation as well. I accept that. But I mean, again, like, as I said, not every day is going to be a cup final. There is going to be mistakes, and it's just learning from the mistakes. And maybe the next day you'll go out. I mean, I'll ref tomorrow night. I'll make mistakes. I just hope I won't make the same mistakes when I ref on Sunday, you know?
And what about yourself, Siobhan?
Yeah, same as Seamus. Like, for me, the biggest one, particularly at the start of the second half, is that you might end up pointing the wrong way, and you'll just say, listen, girls, I've made a mistake, and you go the opposite way. Now, thankfully, I've never had to change my decision when I've come to say like penalties or that, but I have seen referees and they go in and they've signaled the penalty, and they go in and they talk to their umpires, and that's what they're there for. And their umpires have told them it wasn't a penalty, you know, and they've reversed their decision. You know, the umpire had the better view, and as long as you get to the correct decision, it doesn't matter who's done it or what you've done, as long as you get the right decision at the end of the day. I would rather change my decision and make sure it's the right decision than going with my first thought.
I think there's another good one in here, and I'll do it reverse way around. Are players allowed to question a referee's decision? Are mentors allowed to question a referee's decision if they disagree? If so, when? Maybe start with you in that one, Siobhan.
It depends on the demeanor and how they speak to you. And that, like, if a player asks me a question, I use the word ask. If I make a decision and a player asks me, I will tell the player what I've seen and what my decision is. But if a player comes shouting at you, or saying things, or constantly questioning your decision, then that to me is dissent. And so it's completely different. You know, if a player is respectful, and as Seamus said earlier, give respect, get respect, I will tell the player and give them what I've seen and why I've made my decision. But if a player comes shouting at you, I'm not going to shout back at them in that, because then you're getting into a frenzy and it's not worth it.
It's sort of come back to Siobhan, that respect issue, how they speak to you and how they talk to you. And a lot of the time, if you're signaling correctly and you're communicating, they know what the decision's for. Would you find that?
Yeah, well, that's true. If you have certain players, then they just will cry and question everything. Like, I've had it before, and I had a game and a player was constantly questioning, and I told her, I said, if you don't stop, I actually warned her. I didn't send her off. I said, if you don't stop questioning every decision I make, because sometimes she wasn't even involved, then I'll have to give you a yellow card. And I did, because the next time I turned around, she was shouting again. Now that player has never spoken to me like that ever since.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes it's just that she's had the next game I reffed her, I never had to speak to her. So
Yeah.
I think I actually gained that respect maybe from her from the first game.
And Seamus, what about you regarding mentors? So Siobhan sort of asked the players one. Are mentors allowed to question a referee's decision if they disagree, and if so, when?
I wouldn't entertain it. I think it's not their place. I don't think at the end of the day, and I do say this to start the games sometimes to the players, that I'll make mistakes as well. I'm not answerable to anyone on the sideline. So, no, again, maybe at half time or maybe at full time, they may question, why that penalty was given. That's a personal choice. But again, it comes down to demeanour, but certainly not during a game. Certainly, I would not entertain any of that. At the end of the day, you're out there. Your job is to make the decision. And the best of your ability. And if they don't agree, they're not going to agree anyway. If it's against their team, no matter what you say, so you can't win. So you're better off to say, I would always treat them with respect, but I would say I would talk to a full timer. If and that's a decision on what way they speak to you.
Brilliant, guys! It's a credit to you because this is the most probably questions I've had. I've loads of questions here, so I'm going to take the last two. And then that's going to be us done because I'm conscious of the time. So there's one come in here. If a foul occurs between the 13 and the 20 metre line, do you bring it back to the 20 metre line?
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes back out, yeah.
It comes back out. Okay, so that was an easy one. And the last one that we're going to take for tonight is, have you any advice about a player who are good at keeping their hands out when the ball is in the body, but they are on the verge of hugging the player without contact? They do restrict the player in ways. What do you do?
Well, for me, they're not committing a foul. As long as there's not deliberate contact with the body and they're shadowing, to me, it's fine. One that has crept in is, and I don't tolerate it, is players not facing the ball. Players, I see that as a form of intimidation. So I cut that out again, and I have my umpires warn. So the cornerback or the corner forward is looking into the cornerbacks. They're facing each other. But all players need to basically need to face the play. Otherwise something can develop there. Because I know personally, if I was a corner forward and the cornerback was looking into my face the whole time, I'm not. I don't think I'd enjoy it too much. It's a form of intimidation. So I cut that out early as well.
And Seamus, just to wrap up, one piece of advice to finish on.
Not every day is a cup final. There is going to be things where going wrong. Things are going to go wrong. I would, as we said already, get advice. I'd build a good team around me. I think this is important. I think I've been lucky enough with the umpires I've had, and currently have, build that team and use them as much as you can, and look after them, your umpire, because they're part of your team. I don't care how we get a decision. I've said this, and you've heard me say this there. I don't care how we get it right. As long as someone gets it right, and that we do get it right at the end of the day. So build a team, and there will be mistakes made, but something, the next day. Final thing I will say is take the game apart quarter by quarter. If something goes wrong in the first quarter before the water break, forget about it. It's gone. You can't change it. It's a new quarter, third quarter, and a fourth quarter to bring it home. And keep the head straight and enjoy it. I've 22 years experience refereeing. I've made thousands of friends, I would say, because of being a referee, and very, very few enemies. Very, very, very little. So that's what I would say. And
Siobhan, what about yourself?
The biggest thing is that, we all make mistakes. The biggest thing for me is learning from mistakes. That's why, you always like to get assessments and that, and you're always learning. I take it as a learning curve and not as somebody telling you what to do there. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay, we've got the rule book and that, and even by people coming on here tonight, it proves that they want to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask other referees, yourself, Claire, or whoever. I always love the days where we can meet together, because you get talking to other referees, you get their opinions, you can talk and discuss things. And every referee, yes, every referee refs differently, but we're all basing around the same book, the same game. So ask plenty of questions whenever you get to go. Do as many lines, go and umpire for other referees, see as many games, because it's the only way to learn is being out there and actually doing it. You can sit and read the rule book all day, every day, but until you're actually in the middle of a game on the pitch, that's where it all happens. And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Don't be afraid to referee, I think, as well. So that's brilliant. I really honestly can't thank both Seamus and Siobhan enough. They took their time even previous to this to go through the things. So guys, it's really much appreciated, and I hope everybody on here this evening enjoyed it and learned something from it. I know there was a couple of people asked about the tackle, and I wasn't ignoring it. We're going to do another one of these in the new year, and we're going to do a whole section on the tackle. So I just wanted to keep tonight very much on the themes that we had, and I promise you, if you tune in the new year for our second one, we will cover the tackle questions, as I know it is prominent out there. So thank you everybody for logging in. Hopefully you learned something from it and you enjoyed it. Have a great evening, and I'll see you all very shortly. So thanks for that. Bye.